here we go. So part two. So the first presentation I went to kind of talked about email spam and phishing on an advanced level. So this is not how to do it. This is more of like how to prevent the ones that are specifically targeted towards your organization, not just the ones that someone sends in mass, not the ones that have the easy spelling mistakes or come from a really like strange address. These are the ones that are targeted or spoofed. How do you detect those kinds of emails? So the first thing you kind of look for is DNS information. So for example, I have here, it says for an SMTP client to send mail to any user, the email address, so here it's user@example.com, the following must happen. So it has to look up the NS record for example.com. So you can think of this, the example.com could be google.com or Outlook or Yahoo or whatever one it has to be. So it has to look up the NS record for that ending address. Then it has to ask whoever this is, example.com, for the MX records, which the server is which basically is which server is responsible for accepting emails. So again, in this case, if this was google.com, it would ask if I was sending an email to Jarrett and he's got a Gmail account. My email is going to look up the NS record for gmail.com. It's going to ask gmail.com for the MX record, which is just what server to send the email to. It's also going to ask for an A record, which is basically the IP address of the server in this MX record. So again, if I'm sending an email, it goes to Jarrett at Gmail. Gmail is going to say, okay, you are going to send it to this DNS address. And then out of that, I'm going to say, okay, what's the IP address of that DNS address? And once I get all that information, then I send the email. She also made a note at the bottom that if no MX record is available, you can send mail just directly to the A record instead, which is just the IP address of the mail server. So the issue becomes many businesses do not properly configure their mail servers, resulting in an open relay. So an open relay is that the process that I just talked about, your server will respond to anyone sending an email to your company or your mail server. So it accepts mail from anyone, anywhere. So a lot of systems are set up like this. You just send an email. If it's at emich.edu, the emich.edu server is going to respond with the information, no matter who the email is coming from, where it's coming from, anything like that. Spam filters can help reduce this by saying, okay, we see that this email is from a website or a address and it's flagged, so then we'll drop it. But it still does accept that email and give the IP address of the mail server. Basically, if we're talking the one here, if we have something at school that's in our spam filter, an address that's in our spam filter, the mail server will still accept mail from that address, and then it will get filtered out later down the line. It's still being accepted into the network. So, and then this can be exploited. So an example of a properly configured mail server is that it only accepts and passes the following, which is mail from a local IP address to a local mailbox. So that would be me at my Emich email sending an email to Jarrett. It accepts that. Mail from a local IP address to a non-local mailbox. So mail going out, basically, that should just be accepted. And then mail from non-local IP addresses or DNS records that are authenticated and authorized. So basically take the approach of you want to blacklist everything and then only allow certain addresses from certain trusted sources. That way you can basically skip kind of some of this spam filtering because you're only allowing emails from those sites that you trust. The issue with this kind of approach is that it makes the job on the IT department or whoever's in charge of your mail server really tough, because anytime you need to email somebody new, you have a new client, anything like that, you have to go in and whitelist their address. It makes it a lot of work. However, companies that implement this kind of thing basically never have issues with spam because any mail that's not specifically written in is blocked. Finally, the last thing she talked about was reporting spam. So she's like, there's kind of a common myth that reporting spam doesn't really do much of anything. She's like, this is just false. It really isn't. Reporting mail really has a bigger impact than what you think. She said, for example, Google will say, okay, clearly this message is spam. Then they'll look at obviously any messages that have been sent with that email, but also any other messages that have been sent from that IP address, from that DNS address. She's like, they don't just cut out that one IP you sent. They will take a long investigation into any spam that you send and block anything related to that address. So then she just kind of included some stuff here. This is where you can report spam for Gmail, for Amazon, and then this is the one that we have here at school, phishing@emich.edu. You can report any spam there, and they take kind of that same approach of they won't just block that one address. They'll look at the IP, they'll look at a bunch of information, and block probably multiple addresses or multiple DNS links. Yeah.
You also sometimes, if it's a professor working with like doing research programs sometimes or developing classes, your specific email that you found might end up in a class. So be sure to report the funny ones.
Yes, and then Isaac said lots of companies have a report phishing functionality integrated into their web client, which forwards all spam emails directly to the SOC. And then Matthew backed that up. With that, this is some tools that she gave. Basically, this one gives you IP info, domain analysis. It's called Domain Dossier. I never really used it, but these are just some tools she gave if you want to look at it. MX Toolbox, this lets you do header analysis and MX lookup. So we talked about those MX records. This allows you to look up those records, and it lets you look at the header analysis of emails. CyberChef, I'm sure most of us have used it before, but she said it's good for decoding sections of the email header that are encoded. And then we have Message Header Analyzer, which automatically analyzes the message header. So it'll spit out information like those MX records that we talked about, the A records. It'll automatically spit a lot of that stuff out for you. So, all right. That one was short, quick, and easy. Any questions on that one? So, okay. And then I don't see any questions in the chat. Just going to pull it up on this screen. Okay. So the next one, home security. So this guy worked for a company that had a table there, and basically their job was looking at home security solutions and kind of trying to learn how to exploit them, how to make workarounds for them, that kind of thing. They've been hired, I know he said like Blink, that's owned by Amazon. They've been hired a lot by Blink to kind of work on their systems and work on improving the security of those. The big company that he pushed to not use actually is called SimpliSafe. He said they've reached out to SimpliSafe a lot of times and tried to work with them to secure a lot of their equipment that they offer. He said that they've never gotten a response from them. So he really is you'll see, he really kind of dogs on them and their security that they offer. So one of the things he said is ironic is that SimpliSafe has a lot of really good reviews. Buyersguide.org says they're the 5th best home security system in 2021. US News and World Report gave them a 4.2 out of 5. CNET 8.5 out of 10. You can see these are all pretty good. Security.org gave them a 9.2 out of 10 for security. So you can see all these reviews are pretty good for this company. However, they do not have the best security practices because a lot of their stuff can be defeated with this $4 in magnets that I pulled up on Amazon right before I made this presentation. I see we have something in chat. Okay, that was just that. Okay, so anyway, a lot of their systems can be defeated just with this $4 in magnets here. So the way it works is most of the sensors that they sell are these door sensors. They're called a system called reed switches. So what they are is it's basically a magnet, which you can see here, and then this open switch, which is in this box right here. And what happens is that when the two come together, these two, I guess like beams you could call them or like whatever, touch, and it completes the circuit, and then the sensor is activated, and it knows that the door in this case would be closed. When the magnet moves, they separate, and then the door's open and your alarm goes off. Yeah.
Most of the time, they're also indoors. program at the typical.
Yes, yes. So you'll see about that here in a second. But yes, that is a good point. So these are not outdoors. Most of the time, these are indoors. All right. So whenever the magnets move apart, these will separate and your alarm will go off. The issue with these is that these guys right here, these two metal pins, are very, very sensitive to magnets nearby. So, oh, this is just, I forgot, I put this in here too. So this is kind of an example of how it works in a window. So you can see this is, armed, and then this would be, the circuit is broken and your alarm goes off. The issue is that in all these pictures, every one of these is considered armed. And you can see how far apart the magnet is from the sensor. He gave this specific down here. These two pictures are from his presentation, by the way, and those two I found online, other people talking about this issue. This sensor and this magnet here in the bottom left are over 2 inches apart, and it still thinks that it's armed and touching. The magnet is still pulling those two pins in here together at over 2 inches. And the magnets in here are not very big either. They're small, just rectangular magnets. The ones that I showed in the Amazon picture are about twice as big as the ones in here. So probably have twice the strength. So you can see now where kind of the exploit is. And then again, you can see in these pictures how these aren't even on the same level. This one is way up and this one's way down below on the door. And then these, you can see there's a noticeable gap between them. So, I'll get to that here in a sec. So anyway, so really the idea here is that even though they're on the inside, you can crack open a door, probably more than 2 inches, and just stick your magnet on it, and then you're done, right? Another thing he talked about is like a lot of magnets, like the ones I showed in the Amazon picture, already have adhesive on them. So you can just pull that off, have your adhesive ready, crack open the door, stick it on your thing, and then done. You're all set. The alarm doesn't go off. All right. He gave a demonstration of it. Obviously, I'm not going to bring a door up here and give a demonstration, but he showed it was quite easy. He had it at the top of the door. He just cracked it open, stuck it under, done. Another thing that he discussed is he's like, okay, well, how do you know if a home has one of these systems set up, right? Because you don't want to be checking every single door, running around with magnets if you're trying to break in. He said, well, something people love to do is put up signs of the security system they have at their homes. So this is just some pictures I grabbed. There's 2 Simply Safe ones there, and then the ADT ones I see all the time. He said people love to put up signs or stickers or that kind of thing saying that they have a security system. And, the point of them is to try to dissuade people from trying to break in, right? Like, oh, they have a security system or whatnot. But he's like, if I was trying to break in and I saw somebody had the Simply Safe sticker, I'd be like, okay, well, chances are they're going to have these. So I'll just check around the door frames when I'm breaking into your house. Yeah.
Security companies will also oftentimes give you like an extra 50 or $100 off if you put like their logo or their signs up, which is also counter.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that was something he brought up a lot. Is like, even if you have them, what are the chances somebody's going to try to, break in? Well, chances are they know now what security system you're using if you have it posted up all around your house. So, another way. Oh, I see we have something in the chat.
Who is it?
I see. Isaac said, people just using security systems. I thought they just bought the stickers. So, this is another thing he demonstrated. This is not actually the guide. This is one I found on YouTube. This is just a short video I'm going to show. This is him using the Simply Safe system, and you'll see he'll work with this, but he uses this jammer he bought on Amazon for $20 to completely circumvent this connection too, regardless of magnets or anything. So I'll go ahead and play this, and I'm hoping that you guys in the Zoom are going to be able to hear it. I'm going to optimize my screen for video, and hopefully you guys can hear it. If not, post something in the chat. So
it's a little wireless transceiver. So these can be fairly powerful, and thankfully we live in the middle of nowhere, so you do have to be careful with where you use them and how you use them. But in this case, I'm just going to turn it on and go to the frequency of 433.92. So this is the frequency that Simply Safe has put in their FCC filings as the frequency that goes between all of the different sensors in the base station. So theoretically, if you broadcast on this frequency, you're going to get interference. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to basically hold this down around the base station, around the door sensor, and see what happens.
Wireless interference detected.
Okay, interesting. So we're going to do the same thing here. And go to the two. Put in their F sensors and they're going to and see what happens. Okay, interesting. So we're going to do the same thing here with this transmitter and the door sensor. So it's unlocked and transmitting.
Wireless interference detected.
Interesting. So that was interesting. It just said wireless interference detected. It didn't give the door chime that it was opening. So we're gonna step outside and try it that way and see if we can arm the system like before and step in. I have a feeling that this is gonna allow us to walk in without it tripping the alarm, but we'll see. Let's go. Okay. So now we're outside. I'm going to go ahead and set my Simply Safe alarm to home, just like before. Okay, it's home as you can tell from there. So now how this is going to work, I'm just going to walk in. I'm going to hold this up near that sensor, and then I'm going to go ahead and close the door and let go of the mic switch here on the radio. And theoretically, if this works to break into a house, it should go back to the home armed state without knowing that I entered. But if it does trigger the system, it'll start beeping to ask me for the PIN. So I'm actually very interested to see how this works. Let's give it a try.
Wireless interference.
Didn't work.
Alarm off.
Well, that is actually really good news. So in a sense, it kind of worked. As you saw when I walked in the door, it didn't trigger the door signal. But when I did get in and close the door and I turned off the radio or I let go of the switch, it did ask for my PIN, so it did trigger. That's very, very interesting. I wonder if this waits until like you let go of the trigger to sense it. I'm gonna try that real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and arm the system here. Okay, it is armed. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and depress the button, walk in, and I'll hold it for, I don't know, 10-15 seconds and make sure the door is nice and sealed, and then I'll let go.
Wireless interference.
Let go of it. Well, that is interesting. Well, that's definitely interesting. That is not what I anticipated happening. I fully expected it to go off once I let go of the trigger, but maybe like the door sensors only hold the information for so long before they trigger, and so if you keep the interference going or the jamming, basically is what it is, long enough, it doesn't have enough time or it doesn't remember that it was opened. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Basically, I said, I looked up online and he is right about that guess. It does, the sensor sends information for about 10 seconds and then it quits sending anything if it doesn't hear back from the base station. So basically, if you just run the jammer for 10 seconds once you open and close the door, then you're good to go. The base station never knows that the door was open. The only thing that Simply Safe has done to circumvent this issue is you notice that the base station before noticed when there was wireless interference from the jammer. You can enable a setting to have it notify you of that, but I'll get to an issue with that here in a minute. So that was all I said while I was muted. Sorry about that. Okay, so some of the base station vulnerabilities. You know, this is going to be a big point of contact for a lot of people because all of these sensors that you see here, and again, it says up to 20 pieces, all communicate through this base station. So the only way that you're going to get a notification on your phone or know that anybody's breaking in is through this base station. So some ways to get around it are as simple: Faraday fabric or back. You just put it over the base station, done. Nothing's talking to the station and nothing's getting out of the station to talk to any sensors. Another one is just simply unplugging the station. If you're like that guy and your station is right near the door and you're able to unplug it, then any other systems like cameras, sensors, anything like that won't be able to talk outside of the house basically into the internet without that base station. Now, one of the concerns is that, okay, you know, if you unplug your base station, normally you'll get a notification that your station or something is offline. Looking online, it takes about half an hour for by the time the station's unplugged for a user to get a notification that, hey, it looks like your security system is offline. Well, by then, you know, half an hour goes by. You can do a lot in half an hour. So,
Is this specific to the SimpliSafe?
yes, this is specific to the SimpliSafe. I also have a similar experience with the Blink cameras that I use. Whenever they go offline, they can take like 20, 25, 30 minutes before I get a notification that it's offline.
I believe,
So-
so for the security system I have, it's a user setting for when, it'll notify you that it reaches like a certain battery percentage. I think
Mhm.
usually it's like 90%, so half an hour, 90%, whatever. So mine, I think it's like 99% because it shouldn't drop unless the power's out.
Right.
So it might be a user setting that they have. But
That's possible. Yeah. So, well, and it could be too. It depends how, you know, how much your machine, basically, you know, the only way that the base station or that you would get a notification the base station is out is if the base station can't connect to, like, let's say the SimpliSafe servers or the Blink servers or whatever. However often you're setting it to pull with those servers and to send a ping back and forth is going to depend on how long it takes before you get a notification. So if you have control over that, the shorter you set it, the better. You know, if you have it ping every minute, then you're pretty good. If it's like the SimpliSafe for the Blink system, you don't have control over how long it takes before it, you know, how often it pings or how often the servers ping your device to figure out before it's offline. So that's just some other things to think about. All right. Last talk I went to, again, there were only 3 here because, like I said, day 2 was a lot shorter and that kind of thing. This one's about Windows account manipulation. This guy was actually a really good speaker, and I'll have his information, like his LinkedIn and stuff at the end. 63% of the 85 unique procedures for persistence leverage identity manipulation. So that's going to be basically what this one talks about. Manipulating user accounts, whether they're individual users or service accounts or administrator accounts or anything like that. So he came up with this system. He called it the Severance way. It's a new persistence attack to stealthily forge custom individual accounts, which can impersonate and identify on all Windows, any identity, on all Windows NT machines. Only the Severance account holder will know the username and password of the account. It cannot be changed via Active Directory. So you can't lock this system out in Active Directory. You can't change the password. You can't anything like that. After authentication, the Severance account, it's supposed to say can impersonate any existing account, whether it's enabled or disabled. So if you had an administrator with administrator rights and you disabled their account, the Severance account, which we'll talk about, can basically impersonate that disabled account. So I'm going to run through a couple scenarios here of commonly how attacks work, account manipulation attacks work, and then I'll talk about the Severance one and how it works. So the first scenario, we have the attacker, the victim, and the admin. All right. The attacker is going to run this command, net user bad_guy/add. It's going to add a bad guy account that the attacker has control over. The victim machine, in this case, it's just Windows, is going to run what's called a 4720, which is basically just a Windows log number, basically, which just says, hey, a new user was created. The admin, being a good admin, has systems set up and policies set up so that he gets a notification whenever a new user is added. So the admin's going to see this 4720 is going to go through. He's going to get a notification, and he is going to delete that user account that the attack created. No issue. Scenario 2, the attacker is going to do the exact same thing, except he's going to append a $sign here at the end when he makes his account. And the Windows machine is going to say 4720, same thing before. The Windows log is going to go through. The new user is created. The admin is going to look for a user account using that user, as you can see here, and the user account is not going to be there. The bad guy account is missing. That's because the $ basically just makes it invisible to this net user page. All right. However, when you go through the logs, you can see that the new user account has been added, and you can see the $ at the end there, so you can still find it, and the admin is going to delete it. Scenario 3 is more advanced. You're going to be making a machine account. So this is just a bit of code that I'll talk about later. It's part of the Severance program, but basically does the same thing. It's going to create our user with the $ at the end, and then it's going to set some custom flags and privileges. Like before, the 4720 is going to go off in the log. The administrator is not going to see it when he runs net user. It's not going to show up in the list of users. However, going to the logs reveals the account yet again. So we're kind of back to square one. So all three of those methods failed. And those are the three common ways that user exploitation works like that, manipulation. So the bad guy account is detected because when there is an API call sequence that is logged by Windows events, you can set it up so that you get a notification. And then after its creation, user management policies are applied. So if there's any policies that allow you to, like, for example, if a new administrator is made, you can see that, and you can have a policy that says, hey, no more administrators are allowed to be added unless I specifically say so, or unless they're made from this account. So what we need to do is we need to circumvent these issues, specifically the one where when a new user is created, it needs to skip this API call so that it's not logged by the Windows event. That's really what we need to skip, and that'll allow us to add a user without anyone knowing and making it invisible, like I showed you with the $ being appended. So another thing we all need is the account needs to be added to the administrative group or some administrative or server group. And then, like I say here, the Win32 API impedes us to modify the accounts freely. So this is something I don't 100% understand. I ripped it straight out of this PowerPoint. However, this is kind of the process that is taken when a new account is created. So you're going to go ahead, make a new account. It's going to be run through the credential manager, and then any policies are going to be applied. And then it's going to be run into SAM, which is basically, in charge of keeping your passwords, your usernames, and that kind of thing. And then it's also going to go to the event log and then your security logs. All right. This is kind of how the password process looks. I'm not super familiar with it or kind of some of the way these different places talk to each other, but this is what he gave, and this is kind of how the system works. So what we need to do is the attacker needs to be able to circumvent these steps and then skip over the event log and the security log. However, he still has to be able to talk to the SAM, okay? Because that's how you make your new account. Without, talking to the SAM, then you just don't have an account that can be used. So you need to circumvent this stuff, skip this, and then just talk to the SAM system. So before I move on, he talked about doing this process, and I took pictures of it, but it is really over my head. So I am not going to talk about it, because if I talk about it, I'm just going to talk about little bits and pieces, and it's probably not going to make a whole lot of sense because it didn't even make a whole lot of sense to me. So I instead have attached the QR code for a blog that he posted going through the steps on how to basically circumvent this, skip those steps, and talk directly to the SAM. So the QR code is there. Basically, the idea is that you dynamically craft a Severance account without calling the Win32 API that functions to create, your logs, basically. So if you can do that, then you can go ahead and create this Severance account, and no one will know. Another thing he did is he actually created a Severance.exe program, and I should have attached a picture, but oh well. Basically, it does this step right here for you. It just does it all for you. It says, okay, what do you want your user to be? What do you want your password to be? It asks for some other information, and it does all of that for you, done, including skipping over the event log and the security log. So that program can be found here. And then like I have here, it adds the extra layer of stealth by appending the $ to the username, so that when you go and look at the list of users, you're not like, hey, why is this account here? This, nobody made this. And then obviously there'll be no notification of a new account being created because of the Windows logs being circumvented. So, oh, and then the program also configures the account as an admin as well. So something to look into. It seems really cool. Yes. Okay. So with that, I just have the QR code for the GrrCon's website. The tickets for GrrCon go on sale in March. We're going to look at going next year as a club. But I'm just putting this up here so that you can see kind of their website, some of the people that sponsored it this year. Starting in 2019, they haven't done it since, and I'm not sure why, but 2019 and going back, they have all the presentations recorded. Those are all on the website at that QR. So if you want to go back, scroll through, find something that look interesting, I may look into some and make like a GrrCon 2019, group or presentation of all the cool stuff that they had. So anyway, that's the website. And then I just have, the tickets go on sale in March, and the conference was sold out the last couple of years. So, we're going to look at going as a group, but if it's something that you're interested in, I highly recommend going. I learned a lot. I was able to bring a lot of the information I brought back here and present it. There's a lot of stuff that I learned that I didn't learn so much about it that I could come and present it, but it still gets your feet wet in a lot of cool and unique areas. So that will conclude my presentation. Does